Now, stay tuned for Super Trax, America's ultimate mud and monster truck challenge.
Hi, I'm Chris Chapman at Anaheim Stadium in Southern California. Coming up, 9 of America's wildest monsters battle it out for the first time ever on an extremely dangerous Z-shaped obstacle course.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Brett Kepner at the Metrodome in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where 24 of the nation's toughest super-modified mud racers have assembled, including South Dakota State champion Joe Ryan, in what could be one of the wildest super-modified battles ever in the North Country. 14 aggressive drivers will sprint through the mud at speeds of up to 65 miles per hour. Plus, stuntman Brian Carson attempts to survive a flight into tons of towering metal. Welcome to Super Trax.
Jim Kramer, driver of Bigfoot 9, and Jim, I understand you brought this truck out here with a fresh coat of paint on it.
Well, the fresh coat of paint comes in on the underside. We made a lot of changes in this truck. We built this truck to be a very lightweight truck, but now we have designated weights we have to comply with, which is 10,000 pounds, so we went and put heavier axles in and actually weighted the truck back down to make it meet that rule. Well, this is a very challenging course. I've never seen a course like it. It's like a double Z, and it's a lot of turning, braking, acceleration. It's going to be very challenging to do, plus the fact that a lot of changes have been made in the truck. I've got to do some adaptation to meet the needs to be able to run this track, and I think I'm ready. I hope the truck's ready.
The track itself is ready as well. One of the more bizarre courses ever in monster truck racing, a zigzag Z course that could present more than its fair share of problems for unfamiliar drivers. Jim Reese from right here in the Los Angeles area will kick off qualifying with the Ecology Junkyard Eliminator. What a hit! The first launch of the night is a sky-high ride. Now making the first turn to the right, a short straightaway, then a hard left. And Reese handles it beautifully as he sets himself up for the final straight. The finish line located at the end of the crushed cars on the final straight. There's the finish line poles, and Reese sets the pace in qualifying. The first run, 21.17 seconds for the Eliminator. Meanwhile, Robert Parker, the AM/PM Boss Ford, leads the line. Parker handling the first turn with a little bit of apprehension, and understandably, this is a unique course. Most drivers have never, ever competed on a course like this. Whoa, rear wheel up in the air as Parker tries to cut the last turn a little bit sharp. But straightens it out for a good run. The elapsed time for the California Ford of Seth Dalton and Robert Parker, 23.02 seconds. That'll be good for the number 2 spot. On the starting line this time around, Bobby Z at the wheel of the Skull Crusher Ford. Big time problems as Z actually gets caught up in some fender panels on the junk cars. And now takes a conservative approach to the very first turn. Getting on the throttle a little harder now and going very, very tight into the last turn. Lining himself up for the finish line. Z crosses the finish with a time to beat of 21.17 seconds. His elapsed time, 26.09 seconds. It certainly appears as though this course will present a true challenge to the monster truck competitors involved here at Anaheim. But now it's time for another Crunch of the Week. It was in Richmond, Virginia that David Morris in the Equalizer was battling Rob Litkow in the USA1 Chevrolet for a title. But at the finish line, a serious nosedive in the far lane by the Equalizer put Morris upside down and then into a series of barrel rolls. It looked as bad as any monster truck crash on record. But Morris escaped without a single injury in this incredible crash. That's this week's Crunch of the Week. Super Trax will be right back with more extreme motorsports action. Don't go away. qualifying is underway. We still have 3 more machines to go, including this machine. The legendary Bigfoot with the team #1 driver Jim Kramer at the wheel. The mark to beat 21.17 seconds. The Ford taking the starting line more aggressively than anybody has so far and making the turn harder than any truck yet. Kramer stumbles a little bit on the last turn, but now gets hard on the throttle of the supercharged Ford. The mark to beat, 21.17 seconds. Kramer and Bigfoot runs 21.13 seconds. By 0.04 of a second, the Ford takes over the pole from Jim Reese, but the battle isn't over yet. Here's Dennis Anderson and the crowd favorite, the Gravedigger. Unbelievable airborne leap. Anderson lands and heads into the first turn. Hard on the throttle now, hard on the brakes as he goes hard, tight left and heads for the finish line. The mark to beat still 21.13. And problems for Anderson. A small exhaust header fire underneath the truck. He's got big time problems. What was certainly going to be the best run of the event so far now ends with the fire extinguishers being sprayed on the green Chevrolet. On the starting line, Gary Schott's Valvoline racer gets ready, but looking at the replay of Dennis Anderson's mishap, it's important to note that our elapsed time clocks indicated that the Gravedigger was bettering Bigfoot's time by at least 3 seconds when the problem occurred in the last turn. He had the run of the event going, but settles for a time of 3 minutes, 32 seconds flat. Gary Schott heads very conservatively for the first set of cars. Big power stand as he applies power in the middle of the crush cars, now moving into turn 1. Schott at this point seems concerned that the heavyweight Valvoline Chevrolet may not be suited as much to this particular track as some of the lighter weight trucks, as he is apparently just going to take his time and make sure he gets around this course in order to qualify. He'll already be well ahead of Dennis Anderson's Gravedigger. The elapsed time, 33.09 seconds. Chris Chapman is talking with Dennis Anderson right now.
Dennis, fire and monster trucks do not mix.
Yeah, I know it. What happened to me is one of my my little wing nuts on my injector got loose, and the throttle was sticking on me. So I was hammering on the brakes trying to get it to slow down so I could make this turn. So I just shut it down over there and said, what the heck, I'm going to lose out on qualifying. But we came back, we got the idle set back down on it, and I finished my course, so I'm still in.
So what did you think when you looked back there? And I'm sure you could see there was a fire.
Yeah, well, I knew my brakes were hot. I could smell it before I even stopped. So I was just hoping it didn't go burst into flames. So we got it together. We're ready to go again.
And then whatever possessed you to go off the other end of the track and almost turned it over?
Yeah, well, that was for my fans, you know. And if I would have gone up and crawled across the cars, that's not my style. I got to get air and be wild.
And wild he is. Thank you, Chris. So with qualifying over, Bigfoot leads by 0.04 of a second, but that was only qualifying. The race itself is yet to come. Stay with us. We're back, but this time we're at the Metrodome in Minneapolis, Minnesota for super modified mud racing. From a standing start, these machines will accelerate 80 feet and then try to stop within another 80 feet against the clocks in a lapse time competition. Joe Reinold from South Dakota with his Jeep Funny Car. The South Dakota State champ will take on a nearly identical machine driven by Bill Worth here at the near lane called the Mud Dragon. Full power now, hard on the brakes. And look at Reinold stopping within feet of that 80-foot disqualification mark past the finish line. You've got to stop him and stop him quick. The elapsed time for the South Dakotan, 3.35 seconds. For Worth, a 3.479-second run. The top 4 drivers will qualify for the final run. Steve Ron in the Crystal Blue Persuasion Jeep in the far lane takes on the Ford Bronco called Runnin' Wild of Mark Mahould. Jump and runs into problems, and now the Crystal Blue Persuasion machine stops well within the allotted distance His elapsed time, 3.10 seconds, the quickest run we've seen so far. And remember, like I said, the top 4 drivers, the 4 quickest times, will advance to the championship round. A tough break for Mahowald, but obviously the Big Blue Ford, despite a superior starting line launch, ran into problems very early in the run. His elapsed time, 7.068 seconds. And right now, that's the run the next drivers must beat to qualify for this 4-car field. Here's Mike Stark and his beautiful Chevrolet called Stark Raving Man against this man, T-Ray out of Kentucky, and the supercharged Chevrolet-powered Jeep funny car called TNT. A longtime campaigner of the U.S. Hot Rod Association Super Modified Mud Racing Trail and one of the wilder guys. A tremendous run for the TNT machine, but just barely going out of bounds. You can see the look of disgust on T-Ray's face as he literally takes up 3 feet too much in stopping that machine. The elapsed time for Stark, 4.40 seconds, will qualify him, but the 298 by TNT will not get in. Lenny Ischiaria, the beautiful Just Another Ecstasy fuel-injected Chevy-powered Jeep funny car, will move up against Randy Van Werthausen's Iowa-based 1976 Corvette called Swamp Rat. The radically altered Chevrolet inches forward into the starting line beams. The show-quality Jeep in the far lane is well known for its ability to put down big numbers. The Corvette leaves first and gets to the finish line first. Ischiara goes out of bounds and wastes an exceptional 3.35-second effort. The Corvette at 3.022 seconds will qualify number 1 in the field with that run. Interestingly, that will bring out Randy Van Werthausen's Iowa-based brother, Robert Van Werthausen, in the Wild Thunder Chevy-powered machine built exclusively for this sport. But he is up against the astounding supercharged Chevrolet 1923 Ford of Bud Thompson, the time traveler. Thompson hard on the brakes. He goes out of bounds by a mile. A tough break for Thompson, and that may well have been the quickest run of the night. In the other lane, the Wild Thunder machine runs 3:06, but what a ride for Thompson. The quickest run so far, DQ or not, had been a 298. You went 2:06 and got disqualified.
Broke the front end, so he had no brake.
That's all it was, there's no brakes on the front end?
Yeah, he broke a U-joint up there, I believe. Yeah, just shattered all over and just... When the U-joint breaks, no brakes up there.
It looked for a while like this was going to be one of the toughest fits ever. It's like super glue out there.
Well, it's pretty rough down there. It's pretty rough at the end. If you're bouncing too much, you can't stop it.
Tough break, but an incredible run.
Thank you.
It's rough enough to try and stop when you're bouncing all over, but when you don't have any brakes, it's impossible. So number 1 at the end of this segment of qualifying, Randy Van Werthausen in the Swamp Rat Corvette, followed by his brother in the Wild Thunder. Number 3, Steve Ron's Crystal Blue Persuasion, and Joe Reinhold rounds out the top 4 right now. And now it's time for this week's Power Drive. In Anaheim, California, Dennis Marson's Power Play supercharged pickup had to make a pull past the 200-foot mark to win a showdown of champions. Wheels up and straining for the last 50 feet. Marson managed to just inch past the mark he needed to hit. 202.9 feet for the victory. That's this week's Power Drive. Super Trax will be right back with more extreme motorsports action. Don't go away. We are still at the Metrodome in Minneapolis, Minnesota, continuing qualifying for the Super Modified Camel Mud Racing Shootout. A 4-car field. Only the 4 quickest drivers will take part, and the next pair is already on the starting line. It'll be the hometown hero, an immaculate piece of equipment called Psychobabble, a supercharged small block Chevrolet-powered Jeep funny car, campaigned by Dwayne Hirsch. He will be up against the awesome new Mudbuster of Mark Green, and we had a chance to look at it earlier. It may look confusing, but for the last 5 years, this has been the best working suspension in super modified mud racing. But this year, Mark Green's incredible Mudbuster Jeep out of Illinois has something else going for it, along with an incredibly hard-working chassis, about 400 extra horsepower, the brand new supercharged Chevrolet motor, and its first time out here at the Metrodome.
Everybody else is going to these big superchargers, and there's a lot of organizations that just don't allow the nitrous anymore. And you just have to put a supercharger on it.
So after making the switch from nitrous power to the supercharger, an untested machine sits in the far lane. Both drivers must go quicker than 3.350 seconds to qualify. Both drivers on the brakes hard, and they'll both stop in time, but it's the local boy Hirsch in the near lane, a 2:47 to take the #1 spot. Green goes 2:75. #1 qualifier in the low 2-second zone. You're the first guy to really get off that starting line, Dwayne.
That's the power of a slow block. That's all I got to say.
Nothing but RPM. That one sounded like a 10,000 RPM shot all the way.
7,800.
It was singing. This pit is incredibly sticky. That's what's slowing people down. Is there more torque involved with this thing that's getting you off the line?
Well, it's not torque. It's just a slow block wind faster. You just wind up.
Well, it worked. We'll see if it holds up for the shootout, guy. Great job.
I hope so, thanks.
It will definitely put the pressure on the remainder of the competitors trying to qualify for this field, as now the bump spot goes all the way down to 3:06. Here's the point-blank shortened Chevrolet of Gordon Jesse taking on this guy, Big John Daly, and the Jeep aptly named Hang On. Both cars utilizing nitrous oxide injection. Waiting for the green. Fireball and explosion in the far lane for Gordon Jesse. Daly will get the win, and what a pass. 2.483 seconds for the #2 qualifying spot. A tough break for Jesse. He is way out of bounds, but you saw that fireball going right into his face when the engine backfired in the shutdown area. He is disqualified. That will bring up one of the toughest drivers in the central Midwest. This is the gorgeous Heartbeat Chevrolet of Jim Bamford. Always a tough runner despite its somewhat short wheelbase. He will be up against Rich Smith, the radical rear-engine machine called Southside Shaker. You want to talk about wheelbases? This one is long. But something goes wrong for the Southside Shaker, and it's Bamford who gets to the finish line first. But the elapsed time won't be good enough. 3.46 seconds. Even larger problems for Schmidt at 3.77 in the rear-engine Chevrolet. Next up in the near lane, Tim Finch, the Bushwhacker Jeep, an immaculate piece of equipment, takes on the heavyweight, high-riding Ford of Darrell Hirsch, the big truck called the Maniac in the far lane. Ball moves in the far lane, but what a pass here in the near side. But surprisingly, Finch will only run 2.98 seconds. 2:98 for Finch, runs into problems in the shutdown area. Even bigger problems were encountered in the far lane by Hirsch. Len Brink, the 32 Special out of Michigan, is the last car to try and qualify. A great run on the brakes. He'll stop it within a matter of feet, and the elapsed time, 2.508 seconds, will qualify #3, and that gives us a tough 4-car field going into the championship dash. The #1 qualifier will be the hometown hitter, Dwayne Hirsch, at 2:47 in the Psycho Machine, followed by John Daly. Then at the #3 spot, Lynn Brinken. On the bump spot, #4, the brand new Mudbuster of Mark Green. When battle resumes, it will be awesome. Eliminator, Gravedigger, Bigfoot, and the rest will be back. Plus, stuntman Brian Carson in one of the wildest stunts ever. Stay with us. We're back at Anaheim Stadium in Anaheim, California, and ready for the first round of side-by-side monster truck racing on one of the most bizarre courses ever conceived, a zigzag Z-shaped course. Bigfoot versus Gary Schott and the Valvoline Monster leave the starting line together, and Bigfoot drives away like a rocket. Now into the tight first turn, each driver making a hard right and throwing almost a solo run for Jim Kramer. Look at him make the turns, get right back on the throttle. He'll cross the finish line well ahead of the heavyweight Chevrolet. And in Gary Schott's defense, it should be pointed out that he's giving up about 7,000 pounds to the Big Blue Ford, and just to make it that close was a chore in itself. The next pair already staging up and ready for action. The AM/PM boss of Robert Parker on the right-hand side against the green machine that had problems. Dennis Anderson, another incredible leap in the Gravedigger. They go into the first turn. Parker stalls and will hand a huge advantage to the Gravedigger Chevrolet. Parker apparently unable to recover. It'll be another near solo effort. Anderson goes to the next round. Now, it should be pointed out that the quickest loser of this first round will be inserted into the semifinal field of 4. But Parker is still stuck at the end of the first straight. He will not be a factor in that. The next pair on the starting line, it'll be in the far lane, the Ecology Eliminator of your number 2 qualifier, Jim Reese. Huge hole shot over the green Skull Crusher. Look at Reese sideways off the first set of cars, now setting up for that hard right-hand turn. They actually make the turn together. It looks like the Skull Crusher may actually be a factor here. But look at the red Chevrolet driver locking up the brakes with the rear wheels coming up. He hits the pole. But that won't be a disqualification yet. Reese hits the finish line a winner. After one of the wilder rides, and credit has to go to the Skull team for keeping up in a heated battle. On the replay, you can see the hole shot. Watch this landing for the red Chevrolet sideways there. But when they went into the first hard, literally U-turn to the right, it was really an even battle. The difference was made up right here. The Chevrolet powers into the turn, locks up the brakes, and pulls the rear wheels off the ground. He taps the pole, but Reese straightens it out and comes home a winner in the first round of eliminations. A wild run for the hometown favorite. But obviously, Reese has his sights set on bigger prey. He wants Gravedigger and Bigfoot. Don't go away, because we've got championship monster truck action from Anaheim, California, and back in Minneapolis. The quickest and fastest indoor motorsports machines in the world. Those 4 drivers will return for a one-shot battle at the title. When battle resumes, it will be awesome. Eliminator, Gravedigger, Bigfoot, and the rest will be back. Plus, stuntman Brian Carson in one of the wildest stunts ever. Stay with us. Don't go away. We pointed out that the first round's quickest loser would be reinstated into the semis, and here he is, the Skull Crusher in the far lane. But problems already set in here in the first race of the semifinals, and Jim Reese's Ecology Eliminator drives away from the struggling Skull Crusher. It should be a free ride for the Chevrolet pilot. Reese manages to keep the rear wheels on the ground coming around the last turn this time around. Now nails the throttle hard to cross the finish line and advance into his first final round appearance of the 1991 U.S. Hobbit Association season. Big problems for the Skull Crusher team. As you can see, they won't even make it to the finish line. On the replay, the look at Reese. You want to talk about aggressive driving styles? This man means business in a huge way. The last turn was nearly perfect, locking up the brakes, then heel to toe, back to the gas, hard on the throttle, and coming across the finish line a winner. Bobby Z was never in the contest. That will bring up the clash of the Titans, Bigfoot and Gravedigger, to meet the Ecology Eliminator in the final. A wheel standing launch for the Gravedigger, but a sideways landing. He'll make the turn anyway. Jim Kramer and Bigfoot swings around perfectly and has to make up the difference. Coming into the last turn, it's going to be tight. Anderson goes wide and looked almost scared of running into Bigfoot side by side, but now Kramer goes past the winner. Look at Anderson all over the track, but a loser nonetheless, as Bigfoot uses sheer intimidation to win. You could see the advantage going to the Gravedigger off the starting line. Then that bobble allowed Jim Kramer to make up time. That put them dead even going into the last turn. Now watch Anderson. He had it straightened out, but saw the blue Ford coming around. He actually gave room to Jim Kramer and then went sideways trying to make up for his own mistake. Kramer benefits on Anderson's indecision. So as a dejected Dennis Anderson heads to the pits, the semifinals have produced a Ford versus Chevy Eliminator versus Bigfoot battle, and Chris Chapman has Jim Kramer. Chris?
Jim Kramer, an impressive win over Gravedigger. How'd that make you feel?
Oh, real good. I tell you what, my Firestone tires are biting so hard, I got to loosen up my clutch so I get more hole shot. He jumped me out of the hole, but I got him in the corner, and that's the main thing.
Now you're coming up against a local favorite, Jim Reese, the Eliminator.
Jim, I've raced before. We kind of go tit for tat, you know what I mean? Sometimes he wins, sometimes I do. I'm going to give him a heck of a run. The truck's doing well. I'm going to try to keep it together.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Chris Chapman. It seems that Jim Kramer is plenty confident going into the championship finale against the hometown hero, Jim Reese in the Ecology Eliminator. But in the meantime, back in Minneapolis, we are getting ready to witness a legend in a field in which few have gained success. The one, the only, Brian Carson, one of the greatest daredevils in the history of motorsports exhibition action, is preparing one of his most famous jumps, taking a 4,000-pound passenger car through the air at 65 miles per hour, head-on into a wall of machinery here on the floor of the Metrodome. Carson himself is different than any other daredevil preceding him. In fact, he personifies the difference between a stuntman who presents the aura of illusion and a daredevil who cheats death itself. His job will be to take a 4,000-pound passenger car and crash it into that pyramid of machines without the benefit of safety equipment while making a right-hand turn. The car actually gets sideways on his first attempt as he moves up to the ramp. Carson knows that this particular stunt may be one of the most dangerous yet on a concrete floor covered with dirt dust, in which he must make a hard right turn at speed and hit ramps perfectly that he cannot see when he starts his run. There you see the target, his objective to hit the X marked on the second car from the top of that 40-foot high pyramid of metal. And now Carson, fully aware more than ever that the floor is extremely slippery, backs the car up to the staging area. Keep one thing in mind as the car backs up. Carson's biggest objective is to survive this jump. Why? Because he refuses to use any safety equipment other than a standard lap belt. No roll cage, no neck collar, no special braces to keep the car intact. No safety equipment whatsoever. He starts the run, makes the turn, and goes for the jump. Unbelievable with the car on fire. It lands right side up. That is a good sign. The safety crew is already beginning to extinguish the multitudes of fires that have started. Look at the front end of the car, the roof itself, taking a tremendous impact. We can't see for sure whether Carson is moving within the car, but he cleaned off the pyramid of metal in a spectacular way. Still more fires on the floor of the Metrodome being extinguished, while the safety crews work to get Carson out of the remains of the Buick. He appears to be moving. And he's motioning to be pulled out of the car. It looks like Carson has gotten out of this one at least consciously. And now he's pulling himself through the open window, and Carson is okay. An amazing individual as the helmet comes off. He appears shaken. Certainly he is not ready to stand on his own at this point, talking things over with his crew chief. But now he's up. An incredible job. The smoke from the explosion sifting through the rafters of the Metrodome. What an incredible job.
It looks like Brian Carson is ready to talk. And Brian, we've seen this act enough times to know that I think just about everything went wrong on that jump.
I'll tell you, I don't know what happened. All I want someone beat the hell out of me in that car.
An incredible jump. I had to feel for you when you actually came in the first time. You don't like to make flybys, and when you came in the first time, that thing was dead sideways.
Yeah, I lost in the turn, and, you know,
just I don't know if there's a lot of luck that we got this thing in off the ramp. But you give your word we're going to do something. You know, the conditions weren't right to do it because we didn't have a straight run in, and we had a lot of things that weren't working with us. But, you know, you say you're going to do something, you keep your word no matter if you're a postman or a stuntman, you just do it. God bless America and love you, Minneapolis.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Carson. But if you thought that was wild, get ready. The Camel Super Modified Mud Racing Shootout and Monster Truck Championships are still to come. Stay with us. We are still at the Metrodome in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have completed the qualifying rounds, and now the 4 quickest drivers of nearly 24 entries will battle it out in 80 feet of 36-inch deep mud to determine the USHRA Association Midwestern Mud Racing Championships. The Psychobabble supercharged small block Chevy Jeep of the hometown boy, Minnesota's Dwayne Hirsch, will be the first one to set the pace here in this shootout round. Each of the 4 quickest drivers receives 1 run through the mud, and the quickest elapsed time wins the overall championship. It was Hirsch who told us that he believed his small block Jeep, which gained the pole in qualifying, had an advantage on this course. Tightening the shoulder straps as the crew chief for the Orient Express sponsored machine checks everything, shakes his hand, and sends him on his way. One man against the clocks here in Minneapolis for the Silver Modified Mud Racing Championship. With his arms in the air, signaling to the starting line crew that he is not touching any control while they connect the kill switch that will automatically shut all electrical systems down, including the engine, right at the 80-foot mark, enabling the driver to concentrate solely on stopping the machine. Now, inching forward into the electronic photo cells that mark the starting line. He's ready. The visor comes down. Minnesota's Dwayne Hirsch ready to assault the mud pit. On the brakes hard. He stops it in time, and he knows it. A tremendous run for Hirsch. The elapsed time on the pass, 2.570 seconds. He slows down just a little bit for his qualifying run, but that kind of mark will be tough to beat. The next driver up who will attempt to beat it will be the surprising Big John Daly. In his Jeep called Hang On, the Chevrolet-powered machine put down a tremendous 2.483 second elapsed time in the first round. Daly knows he must go quicker than 2.570 seconds to take over the lead. The ground crew connects that same kill switch that will shut the machine down right at the finish line. Daly knows he can go as quick as Hirsch. He went quicker than that in the qualifying round. Chevrolet power in a racing chassis equipped with the mandatory Department of Transportation approved tires. Daly ready for his shot. Purging the nitrous oxide system. That's the white vapor you see coming from the side of the machine as he rids the nitrous oxide injection of air bubbles, and 53-degree below zero vapor emits from a check valve on the side of the machine. The extra oxygen injected into the motor hopefully will give him the power to make a shot at a title. Tries to stop the machine. He stops it in time, but was the elapsed time quick enough? He had to go quicker than 2.57 seconds. He runs 2.70 seconds. It won't be enough to take over the #1 spot. On the replay, the machine left the starting line beautifully. Through the shutdown, he stops it in time, and he looked happy with the run. Obviously, none of you guys are giving it an easy shot here. You're driving it out the back door.
Oh, yeah, you got it with these guys here. I'm running the carburetor in this thing. I'm beating most of the blowers, and the car's running good tonight.
That's what I said. It's amazing that you would have qualified so well, only 100th behind the leader with a machine that's probably down about 500 horsepower on some of these guys.
Well, that's not always true. It's got plenty of horsepower here. I just proved that.
Congratulations, guy. We'll see what it does.
Thank you.
Daly obviously disappointed, but very happy with the way the machine performed against some of the best in the business. That will bring up the number 3 qualifier, who ran 2.50 seconds. Only 0.03 of a second behind the number 1 man in the qualifying round, Lynn Brink. And the incredible supercharged 1932 Chevrolet Coupe, called 32 Special. A very narrow tread width with 2,000 horsepower on tap. The ground crew again connects the kill switch that is mandatory on every super modified mud racing pass throughout the U.S. Hot Rod Association season. And now, knowing full well that the engine will shut down without him worrying about it, Brink moves up for his shot at the title. He'll stop in time, but a very obvious problem, maybe even an error for Lynn Brink. Afraid that he might slide past the 80-foot distance stopping boundary, past the finish line. Brink obviously shut the engine down about 7 or 10 feet before the finish line. He was worried about the traction needed to stop at the other end. Watch the replay. And with the wheels locked up before the finish line, that appears to have been the problem. And Leon, I don't think I need to tell you, you may well have shut this thing down a little too early on that one.
I was worried about coming out the end.
Everybody was worried about disqualifying. The machine seemed to hook up pretty well on the starting line, but a 294 wouldn't cut it.
Oh, well, better luck next time, I guess.
That's a tough way to go when you have to make a decision that might keep you from being disqualified, that unfortunately gives you an elapsed time slower than needed to win. But the man who's happy about all this is Dwayne Hirsch. The hometown hitter in the Psychobabble Jeep still leads this shootout field at 2.570 seconds. And the crowd of over 40,000 need only to hold their breath for the hometown boy through one more run. Illinois' Mark Green in the brand new Mudbuster, after switching from nitrous oxide injection with his Chevrolet power plant for years. A motor strong enough to keep him in the top 10 in the World Points Championship. He has switched to a supercharger and has a huge displacement advantage over his opponent Hirsch. He must go quicker than 2.57 seconds to win. Trying to stop it in time, within 2 feet of disqualification, but wasn't quick enough. The mark to beat 2.570. Mark Green runs 2.387 seconds on the replay. The machine leaves the starting line perfectly. He drives it full throttle to the very end and then stops within a foot of disqualification. He knew it was a good one, and it was good enough to win. Dwayne Hirsch has to swallow his pride, getting knocked out of the #1 spot on the very last run. Unbelievable job for Mark Green. Meanwhile, back in Anaheim, California, we are ready for a showdown of monster behemoths. It'll be Jim Kramer at the wheel of the Bigfoot Ford, taking on another hometown hitter, Jim Reese, at the wheel of the Ecology Auto Wrecking Eliminator. The Z-shaped course has caused quite a few drivers to make several second guesses that cost them a run. But right now, everybody will have to go all out. They leave the line, and the whole shot goes to the hometown Chevrolet. Through the air, they head for the first turn, and a tap. They actually touched going into the first turn. Kramer, hard on the throttle, takes the turn perfectly in the blue Ford. They now move into the last turn. And they collide. Unbelievable. Kramer gets back on the gas and will cruise across the finish line, a winner in Bigfoot. But this may not be over yet. The officials are down on the track. Jim Reese is stunned. He says it was an illegal maneuver, and he's coming out of the eliminator. We'll have to wait to find out. This is a big controversy. Stay with us. We are in the middle of a huge controversy here in Anaheim, California. This is going to need a big decision. Was it rough driving? Was Bigfoot in front of the eliminator? Reese is mad. Mike Speller in front of the truck, the U.S. Hot Rod Association event director, talking with officials by way of two-way radio to find out whether or not it's a legal maneuver. The whole shot definitely went to the Chevrolet. They touch there when Reese gets on the brakes too hard for the first turn. Kramer makes up this much distance, and they come out of the last turn together. Incredible! Was there a driver at fault in this situation? You just received word from the U.S. Helmet Association officials that Bigfoot is the winner. The win officially goes to Bigfoot. The Eliminator sitting with a flattened tire. Driver Jim Reese throwing his gloves in the cockpit. The crew is upset. They say no way. Jim Kramer is out of Bigfoot, and Chris Chapman's got him.
Jim, I think you heard the verdict. You are the winner.
Well, that's why we have officials. The track is really narrow over there. And we talked about this earlier at the drivers' meeting, that when you swing around like that, we've got a little more room, even if you have to drop off of that berm. It's not an ideal track, but that's what we chose to run with. It's a little tight in that area. And all night long, like I discussed with Gravedigger, that came up, just drop off that berm, give a little room. You got to give a little bit. And that's why I got officials. If they thought I was in his lane, I would be disqualified, and he would be the winner. But they judged it I was okay, and he didn't give me enough room. So it was a good run. He run hard. Jim Reese is really a good competitor, and we'll get him next time, or he'll get me, maybe.
What in the world went through your mind when you all got together out there?
All I heard was a boom. It didn't feel real bad. I don't think we have a lot of damage, but I really need to check it out.
Jim, it doesn't really seem fair that you're not in there. It looked like you had that race won.
Yeah, I thought I had it run. It was a real good run for me. I feel like the best of the night. Track conditions are a little tough. It gets tight in this corner, and you know, I don't think it was a fair call, but I guess that's racing.
So do you believe Jim Kramer came into your lane and knocked you out of this one?
Yeah, I do. You know, when you come into a situation like this, you have to bow right away. I came out of my corner. I was accelerating, heading for the finish line. As you can see, if you point the camera, there's only so much lane here before you have a drop-off. Where was I to go? Over there? Probably would have ended up the same way.
Looks like you are obviously not satisfied with the official's decision.
Well, yeah, I'm not real happy. You know, this is our hometown. Got a lot of fans here. We came out here to race and then come out on top, and we thought we had a chance at it. But I'll have to settle with second place tonight.
Indeed he will, after one of the most outrageous final rounds imaginable. The Ecology Eliminator comes out second best, and another victory for the Bigfoot team. At the Metrodome in Minneapolis, it wasn't quite as controversial, but it was just as exciting in the super modified mud war between Dwayne Hirsch and winner Mark Green. You know, we call this thing the best working chassis in mud racing. It didn't disappoint anybody tonight, buddy.
Thank you. Boy, I'm happy about this.
First time out, that's got to be the ultimate thrill.
Yeah, it sure is. We must have done something right in the shop.
And you did a heck of a job driving. As you can see, you are literally about 3 feet away from that DQ line.
Yeah. Oh, boy, I don't know what to say. I'm so happy about this.
Congratulations, a great debut.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. Thanks, Minnesota. See you next year.
Here's another look at the picture-perfect super-modified winning run of Mark Green. Stopping within 2 feet of a disqualification to win again. Well, Mark Green lives out a racer's dream, debuting a brand new machine that he built himself, and despite radical changes, coming out on top. But now the Mudbuster crew gets to experience the real thrill of super-modified mud racing, cleaning up. Thanks for being with us. I'm Brett Kepner. See you next time.
From a very muddy Anaheim Stadium in Southern California, I'm Chris Chapman. Good night.
Thanks for being with us. I'm Brett Kepner. We'll see you next time.